This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
The main event is why we're here. Shawn Michaels is going to pin Vader to retain the WWF title. Meltzer would say Vader has noticeably dropped weight. And Cornette does a pre-match interview. It's an excellent match. But this is one of those matches where we get lots of stops and starts. Vader presses Michaels and drops his throat over the guardrail, and the bell rings, signaling a count-out win at 13:53. Of course, Cornette's ranting and raving. He doesn't want a count-out win. He challenges Shawn to restart the match. And while it doesn't appear that Shawn ever accepted, the match was officially restarted. And at this point, Vader goes after Jose Lothario, which gives Cornette a chance to use the racket on Vader. Vader gets a near fall with a belly to belly. Eventually, after 2 minutes and 10 seconds, we get the DQ. And of course, it's because the racket was involved. But once again, Cornette's going to ask for the match to be restarted as they're doing this pull apart brawl. Gorilla Monsoon, who's the commissioner here, okays it. And finally, Shawn hits the super kick, but Vader kicks out. Then there's a ref bump. Vader hits the power bomb. And now there's no referee to count the fall. A second ref counts the fall, but of course, Shawn kicks out. Vader's climbing up for the Vader bomb, but Cornette tells him to go to the top for the moonsault. Of course, Vader misses that. Shawn climbs to the top for the moonsault body block and gets the pin at the third restart. Meltzer loved the match, gave it 4 stars. And that's not even the best part of the match or the part that people talk about. There's a spot in the match where Shawn goes up top for what most would assume would be an elbow drop, but there was some type of miscommunication. Shawn lands on his feet, kicks Vader directly in the head, and yells at him right there in the ring, "Move!" And famously, this is where Shawn got frustrated and blew his stack at Vader because the match wasn't going as planned. And I think the rumor and innuendo is Shawn had complained that Vader had been too stiff on the house shows leading up to this. And this all comes to a head, and Vader's future with the WWF has forever changed as a result of this match. What do you remember about this?
Well, nothing good. You don't lose your cool like that. Shawn had the license to lose his cool because of his influence with the office.
Yeah.
And Shawn knew that Vince was going to back him no matter what he did. And that's what happened. But Shawn overplayed his hand, in my estimation. It was very unprofessional. And he's just lucky Vader didn't beat the shit out of it, because Leon could have. Leon was hungry. Leon wanted the opportunity. Leon's, like we talked about earlier, these guys that make a lot of money, and they're touring Japan seemingly and almost endlessly. He needed an American base. And now he's in the main event of a major pay-per-view, wrestling for the biggest title that we have. So Leon had traveled a lot of miles. He had lost weight. He had showed a better commitment to what he was doing. And so I just thought it was a totally uncalled for. Shawn had the deck stacked, and because he had Vince in his back pocket. Vince has often told me, that goddamn Shawn Michaels reminds me of me when I was younger. Okay. Did you do a lot of super kicks when you were young, Vince?
Yeah, right.
But he's talking obviously about Shawn's attitude, his demeanor, that type of thing, Conrad. So it was it wasn't good. It should have, and the damn match got, as Meltzer's ratings, it got 4 stars.
A good match.
Yeah. And it could have been a 5-star match if some of that childish bullshit had not occurred.
It's a shame that it went down like this. I do want to mention that the original plan, according to the rumor and innuendo, was we were going to have this finish here and then a Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden where Vader would become the champion, and then a rematch 2 months later at the big show in San Antonio at the Dome. It'd be a homecoming of sorts for Shawn Michaels, and Shawn would be crowned champion again. And his second run of his boyhood dream would happen in his hometown. But apparently Shawn's not happy with the way this match goes. They call an audible, and instead his old pal Sid Vicious gets the nod, and Psycho Sid would become the world champion at Madison Square Garden instead. And really, it feels like Vader never got that momentum back again. Do you think, for lack of a better word, Shawn ended Vader's push?
Yeah.
It's cemented in Vince's mind. He's not ready.
Shawn explained to Vince why he didn't want to work with Leon. You know, it went from everything I remember one time, I had to chew Leon's ass out because he didn't take it seriously that you got to wash your fucking gear.
Right.
You can't let your sweaty gear, sit in your travel bag between bookings. You're off the road, so when the loop is over, you go home, you wash your stuff. And Leon had a propensity to just leave his stuff in his bag. And I had a phone conversation with him one time about that. And the bad part was, I learned from this, he put me on a speakerphone. And I chewed his ass out with his wife listening. And she ironically agreed with everything I said. You got to take personal responsibility, Leon. You got to wash your shit. You got to wash your gear. So he comes back and, Shawn's, another thing, he got in my face, so to speak, and said, I'm not going to work with him no matter if you book it or not, because he won't wash his gear and it stinks. I get all that stink all over me. It's horrible. So I sent one of the Hebners, maybe Dave Hebner, out to buy a lifetime supply of Febreze air freshener. And what I should have got was Ozium. It's an air freshener that a lot of dope smokers use.
You've heard that. Yeah.
I heard that rumor. So so all that shit was so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And you got an athletic monster heel that had universal name identity. And because one guy got his feelings hurt or he was too stiff, I'd never heard of, I done a lot of due diligence on Leon when we brought him into WCW. Because I brought him in to work. I saw the match with Hansen and Leon, where Leon's eye was hanging, dangling. Yeah. And I thought, God damn, man, I can see some more of this and like it. Not to get a guy hurt, but just their organic and natural physicality had me mesmerized. So we brought them both into WCW. Then ironically, when they got there, they didn't want to work together much.
Right.
So much of that concept. But I thought Leon was a fine and a good signing for us. Had he slowed down a little bit? Yeah, he slowed down a little bit, but he had lost some weight and he was trying to get in decent shape. And sometimes when you're big like that and you're gassed a little bit, you can end up being a little stiff inadvertently.
Yeah.
You're just the way it is. So it's a finite art too. You're throwing a punch, you miss, this much and it's a potato. If you miss this much again, I'm going to talk to Vince, which was, that was his go-to. You would think he would come to talent relations or he'd come to the agent. This match that we just talked about, Connie, the Vader Michaels match, had Pat Patterson's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
As you read it, I could say that's Pat's idea.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons Meltzer liked it, because Meltzer enjoyed Patterson's booking by and large, because he'd grown up watching Patterson book his own angles in San Francisco. That was one of his go-tos. Roy Shire's wrestling, and Pat Patterson as one of the stars. And anybody that studies the business knows that Patterson had a whole lot to say about his own booking. He helped, and he was good at it. So Roy Shire got a bonus there. He got a guy that was emotionally involved in his own program, would come up with new ideas for his scenarios, and it worked out real well. So it was just so unfortunate. It's just childish, unprofessional, and should never have happened. And I'm only glad that over the course of time, Shawn has changed, and he's not that, at least my knowledge, he's not that overbearing guy that was always seemingly at the center of controversy. And I'm glad that he's changed for the better, quite frankly. And of course, being drug and alcohol free doesn't hurt things. So now you're clear headed again. You're not in a cloud around you like you would have otherwise. So, but it was just bad. Leon missed out on the title at that point in time. Sid was seen, seemingly for Shawn anyway, a less of a evil, less, and the Shawn beating a man the size of Sid would be the equivalent of him beating a guy the size of Vader.
Yeah.
It's a smaller babyface overcoming, except this time he overcame in a stadium in his hometown. So quite frankly, that made sense, that scenario. But you could have put Vader in that spot, continue to build your story as easily as not. It just didn't work out that way, and it was unfortunate.
Maybe it's unfair to ask, but how much of the heat on Vader? Let me try to rephrase it. We just said that Shawn Michaels had a big blow up with Jim Cornette. Do you think that played into any of Shawn not wanting to work with Vader? I know you mentioned, well, he didn't like his gear and he thought he could be stiff, but also too, I'm sure Shawn thought, and I fucking hate his manager. We just had this big blow up. I just want to be done with this. If I work with Sid, I don't have to worry about smelly gear or getting stiffed, and I don't ever have to work with Jim Cornette again.
It probably had a factor. I don't know how big a factor, but I'm sure it had. Corny was closely associated at that point in time with Big Van Vader.
Yeah.
Leon White. So I'm sure there was some baggage that traveled along on that journey that Shawn was going to play upon, and of course going to Vince, having one conversation with Vince regarding his issues, Shawn's issues, was all it took. And Shawn may have had the idea to put Sid in that spot. It's not a bad idea. You can't poke holes in Sid getting that booking. Sid, like you said earlier, looked great as a champion. He looked great in the ring, had great presence. But the way it came about was totally unprofessional and unnecessary, quite frankly.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. If it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit, with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at savewithconrad.com. Your boy Bruce has said over the years, we didn't get the WCW Vader. We didn't get the monster Vader. We didn't. That guy was gone. We got the guy who got beat by Hulk Hogan's leg drop. Do you agree with that?
Not really.
Me neither.
Not really. It's how you booked, how you brought in. We didn't do vignettes on Vader of any significance. We didn't set the table for him. I understand Bruce's point of view, and I'm not disagreeing just for the sake of disagreeing. JR disagreeing with Bruce again. That ain't it. I thought we got what we thought we were going to get, and but it didn't work out. So you got to put the blame someplace. It couldn't be the booking. Couldn't be creative, for God's sakes. It couldn't be how we presented the guy, and the fact that Leon probably didn't get the quality time in front of Vince that he should have. I think that's a case. So Leon didn't have a big fan club there, and I never did understand why. I think, he was stiff at times. He was very physical, but I never heard of him hurting people. Having a stiff match is a different ballgame than actually going out and injuring people. And I don't recall, and I might be wrong about this. Fans, listeners could probably point that out better than I, but doggone, I didn't remember Vader being a guy that every time you work with him, he sent somebody to the hospital or they're off work because of the injuries due to his match. So I understand Bruce's point, but I also think that Leon was looked at differently in WCW as a talent and as a man than he was in WWE. And I can't exactly tell you why, because I don't know the answer.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com.